and get their immigrant into the country on the other side. So, you know, they have down the bottom, you need a certain number of points to get through. Down the bottom you have whether they speak English or not, and then you have their level of education, you have their age, you have how much experience you have whether they have a job or not when they come to the country, and finally you have what actual industry they work in. And as you click through the industry, you notice that the industries have the most effect on the actual, industry and the degree have the most effect on the number of points they have. So if you've got a food service worker over there, they get 0 points for their actual vocation. A medical tech gets 8 points, and you know a doctor gets 20-something points. I think a supermodel or something gets like 18 points. So it's covering all of the spectrum of immigrants. The last one we're going to look at here is another one of the games that they made for the New York Times, which tracks I think it's the Food and Drug Administration's ability to look at cargo that comes into America. Now, you might have seen recently that a bunch of people got poisoned because they had toothpaste that came from China, and it had some illegal additives in it. So this game seeks to illustrate the fact that from 1997 to last year, the number of shipments that came into America rose from 2 million to something like 9 million, but the number of people who they had to actually look at those shipments remained the same. So they're doing 4.5 times as much work, but these shipments come through, and people get sick and die, and there's always a controversy about it. So the idea of the game in this case is that you have 5 places where the shipments can come into. You've got 2 little dudes who can go around and examine all of the shipments, and you've got to examine as many of the shipments as you come. But you realise on the hardest level that it's not possible to win because there are too many shipments coming in with too many contaminated products, and you just can't keep up with it. So I think on the hardest level I lasted about a month before I had my 3 food scares, and I was game over for me. That's the educational side of serious games. What we're going to look at next very quickly is the ideological wars. And this is basically the war that's going on all around the world at the moment. It's the war in Iraq, it's the war for people's hearts and minds. And there are 3 sides to this. There's conventional, asymmetric and religious. And these correspond to the US Army. The asymmetric is Hezbollah, who have their own game. And the last one is religious warfare, which is the religious right in America, who have their own game as well. So each of these groups is using games to try to recruit people to their cause. And all of them are pretty much fighting in Iraq at the moment. America's Army, which Damian spoke about earlier, was made by the US military as a recruitment tool, and for the 2 years after its release, it helped the US Army achieve its recruitment targets. Since then, they've had a great deal of trouble with the Iraq War being a quagmire and all, that they can't actually achieve those targets anymore, so I think they need America's Army 2 or something better. But the game is similar to Counter-Strike, as Damian already mentioned, and it has been referred to as How We Fight. In World War II, they had a newsreel series which was called Why We Fight, which talked about, why we are going to war. Now they've changed it to not why we fight, but how we fight. And this is a training tool. Train people how to fight, how to go into kind of urban situations and fight. As Damian mentioned earlier, the one, kind of interesting gameplay part of America's Army is that when you're on the US side, you look like a US guy to yourself and everyone else looks like a terrorist. When you're on the other side, you look like a terrorist and they look like a normal soldier. The next game that we're going to look at very quickly, because it's just come out like yesterday or today or something, is called Special Force 2. Hezbollah made a game called Special Force a few years ago, and they've just come out with their sequel, which is strange. They're getting into the whole sequel thing. Special Force 2 is about the 2006 conflict with Israel, and this is a conventional first-person style shooter. But the interesting part about it is the ideology behind it. The quote at the top, this game presents a culture of resistance to children, that occupation must be resisted and that land and nation must be guarded. This is pure ideology that this game is promoting and persisting, which is the ideology that the US currently are fighting against, that these guys are trying to support. They're trying to support their land. I think Hezbollah was recently declared a terrorist organisation. So, this is the terrorists telling their side of the story. It's their land, they're defending it. Right? They're not going out and, and invading other countries, they are attacking other countries. So, everyone's got their side of the story. The last game that we're looking at on the ideological side is Left Behind, Eternal Forces. I'm not sure if anyone's heard about Left Behind, but they're a series of Christian novels that are promoted a lot lately. There's been films, there's novels, and now there's a game. The idea of the game is that during the rapture, all of the Christians are taken from the earth, and everyone who's left behind must actually choose a side. If you choose the path of Christianity, you'll be taken. If you choose the path of evil, which is the only other option, you're going to be damned to, forever. So to win the game, the players must kill or convert all the non-believers who are left behind after the rapture, which is pretty cheery. But the game is actually being distributed to US troops in Iraq, which is ironic, and comes packaged in Freedom Package that include a Bible, an Extreme Sports DVD, and a book. The actual book here, More Than a Carpenter, is printed in both English and Arabic, which means that, there's only, I think, 2% Arabic speakers in the US Army at the moment, which means that what they're trying to do is actually get this into the hands of Iraqis, and it becomes then, again, a recruitment tool for the Christians. And the game is criticised for being bigoted and misogynistic, even by Jack Thompson, right, who, you all know who he is, claims that the game is about killing people for their lack of faith in Jesus. Now, the parallel here between this game and militant Islam is clear, because militant Islam believes the same sort of thing. Either you believe or you're an infidel and need to be killed. So these games are on the polar opposite sides of this game and militant Islam are on polar opposite sides of the religious debate. They're the kind of sad, scary ones. This is what Left Behind looks like. So it's sort of a real-time strategy game where you have to convert people. And the disbelievers send out rock music and I think secular thinkers and things like that. And your followers' faith drops down, and to increase their faith, you have to make them pray more. So that's the sort of thing that some people are doing. The last area here I'm going to look at very, very quickly is games as activism. So the idea here is that these games are trying to raise issues with people. We have two examples here. Superchick Sisters, which sounds like fun, and Escape from Woomera. Now, Superchick Sisters actually just came out yesterday. I was doing some research, and this one just popped up. It's made by PETA, which is the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, and it's a Super Mario clone with a couple of chickens who kind of jump around the world like freeing little chicks. But this is a Trojan Horse, right? The game, it's presented as a normal game, almost, if you will excuse the imagery here of Colonel Sanders holding up a kind of semi-dead chicken. I don't think that chicken's dead yet either. So, and you kind of jump around the levels, rescuing the chicks, and as with Mario, if you get the box that's coming out of this other box, you turn into a bigger chicken and you can jump further and all that sort of stuff. But when you hit these guys, it gives you this interesting sort of fact. Did you know KFC chickens have their sensitive beaks cut off? So this is the Trojan Horse aspect of the game. Now, this game is probably a marketing tool for PETA, as in they know that not many people are going to play it, but for their investment, it will get a lot of media attention, and people will come to it and they will see their message and they will understand their message, and they may support it, they may change their mind, but they will be more visible through this game. And maybe it costs them, God knows how much to make. Maybe it costs them $10,000, and that's better than some advertising. The last game that we're going to look at is Escape from Woomera, which I was involved in a few years ago. This game obviously was about the Woomera Detention Centre, and this came at a time when the political climate, there was a lot of controversy about the detention centres, about refugees, illegal immigrants as they were termed, rather than refugees. And the game got arts funding, which meant that it was government funding, and it was actually, out there saying things against government policies at the time, which caused a great deal of controversy. The game itself is an adventure game where you played a refugee in the Woomera detention centre and you had to try to escape.